Hello, and good evening to anybody that is listening to us. It is March, it is uh, mid March, and it is 2025. And this is the first episode in our new series in this podcast, which is about getting to the core. And this podcast, we really are looking at the journey of getting to the core, and we're trying to be really real about it, which is what we always are, congruent and real about the healing journey. No fluff and no stuff, just the reality of what it is and what it takes to get to the core. And so a lot of what you will see in this podcast is people's real stories, real journeys, and conversations about getting to the core of the issues that we hold. So our first, and it is very fitting that this is our first guest. Our first guest is inspirational for me, anyway. Inspirational to work with, inspirational to have on the team, inspirational to be out in the world, and what the journey that she has taken has been incredible for me to be part of. So let's just say that out of the be congruent and honest about that. So Sadie and I have worked with each other for a while now, and it has been gorgeous to see her growth. And Sadie is also a therapist in her own right, and doing incredible work with her own clients. So it's an inspiration for me to have her on the podcast because her story is that it is inspirational, full of hope, full of bumps and troughs and peaks, and but sure, isn't that what this is about? Because if I was saying to you as we start this today that this is easy and everybody can do it and you can just sail and do it, and well, that wouldn't be a true reflection of what it actually takes to get to the core. So I am inspired by Sadie. I know you will be, when you hear her story and her journey of getting to the core, and I hope it brings you hope and inspiration. That's my intention. So without further ado, I am going to invite Sadie in, and we are going to have this gorgeous conversation. So hello, Sadie. Oh, very welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for that introduction. That's really, really kind of you to say that. I'm inspired by you too, and I know a lot of people are. So thank you for having me, and thank you for, giving us, well, me, this space to, just tell a little bit about, my experience and what this has been like for me. Yeah, so I'm really glad to be here.
Oh, I'm glad you're here. More than glad you're here. And I know you'll be doing this yourself at some point, I'm sure. You'll have your own podcast and you'll be doing your own thing. I'm sure about that. So let's start from the beginning. How long has your journey been? When did it start? What made it start? So not your journey with a method, with my method, but the journey in general. So
Yeah.
because for many people that are listening to this podcast, a lot of people are a long time in the healing journey. How long have you been in the healing journey? I suppose that's my first question.
Good question. How long have you got?
Yeah, as long as mine.
Um, so actually, this goes back 10 years. In 2015, where I first began my journey in counseling and psychology. I originally wanted to be a teacher, but I ended up going on to a placement in Vegas, Las Vegas. I did 6 weeks out there working. And something about teaching just didn't sit with me anymore. There was something about the kids and how they couldn't focus. They couldn't, there was no safety at home. It was just very eye-opening, should I say. I'm 21 at this point. I'm 31 now. So this is a long time ago. But in that, it was just, there's something about the human condition, what we need, what we are missing, what we're lacking. And that kind of moved me into counseling and psychotherapy. So I did 6 years at uni I studied it all. I did it all. I knew it all. God, I tried it all. That was for my own stuff and for clients as well. And me and clients would just get stuck and lost. And, you say it very well when you say whack-a-mole. We were playing whack-a-mole and
And did you find yourself
yeah. Go
Did you
ahead.
find yourself playing whack-a-mole particularly, Sadie? And
Mm,
where were you playing whack-a-mole? So what was your
yes.
what was the symptoms that were presenting, and what were you chasing when you say whack-a-mole? What were
Right.
you chasing?
Yeah. So for me, it was, starting to, I was coming into awareness of, their stuff, but also my own. But it was easier to be focused on their stuff, right? And that was my defense system already. And there was no problem here. The problem's in you. Let's deal with that. But my own symptoms, my own problems that I started to recognize, because again, that starting to look into my own stuff at uni, getting asked questions about how I feel and what that, and I'm like, whoa, I don't know how I feel. I don't know how to connect to that. I had no awareness, no capacity, no tolerance. Every defense system would show up here.
Wow.
But under that defense system, and I guess what was playing out in this kind of behavior and the way that I was operating and functioning was, I was this perfectionist and OCD and, anxiety and depression. And there was just this shame and criticizing myself deeply every day, hating life, hating myself, essentially wanting to not be here anymore was my stuff. Yeah. So
That's
yeah,
a hell of a rap list. You know, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, the weight of that, the weight of the
mm,
difficulty of all of that,
yeah,
perfectionism, OCD. It's enough to have one or two of those, but that's a heavy burden to hold, and to be jumping around trying to heal all of that.
absolutely. And we're getting with that psychology stuff, we're getting assessments around BPD, all these personality disorder, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this
Yeah.
is me. I cannot admit that. I'll end up in an asylum,
But
so
I think that's so important. I think it's so honest.
yeah,
I know we've such similar experiences with that, because I obviously,
yeah,
thought that there was something fundamentally wrong with me, because when you don't know any different, you think there's something fundamentally wrong.
right.
You're a lot younger than me, and I didn't have exposure to the internet the way that you would have, or the information. So when and also I know that you're
Right.
in university as well at that stage, and you're being pummeled with, the DSM,
Yes.
the assessment of. So that must have been very difficult, because you must have been self-assessing the whole time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it was devastating. It was, it was like, and as a therapist, it was like, can you imagine? So I've got my own stuff that I'm now aware of, and I'm coming into kind of awareness of and understanding. But oh my God, I'm a therapist. I can't have all this if I'm a therapist.
Yeah.
Who's going to want to work with me? Who's going to, trust me? If I can't deal with this, how do I expect to help them? But, and so,
But I think, see what you're saying there, right? What you're saying there from a professional perspective is really important. I didn't know that we were going to take this turn, but I'm going to follow you, because I think what you're saying is really important. As a therapist, the expectation is that that you don't have any of this stuff, that you have it all sorted, you've all cleared, and here you are going through therapeutic training, and it's just starting to come under awareness. And not only is it starting to come under awareness, but it's starting to come under awareness with an assessment of, a pathology on top of it. That's terrifying.
absolutely. And what's more terrifying was again, the theory that we couldn't heal this.
Yes.
Yeah. The theory that this can only be managed.
Jesus. Yeah. So you were
So, yeah.
living in all of this
Mm.
awareness, this diagnosis, feeling, and now these are my words, not your words, but as you say, like, who's going to want to be, who's going to come to me for therapy? So you spent all of this time, 6 years, all of this energy, all of this, and you are coming on the awareness for the first time of your own body, your own emotions, your own stuff, your own with all of this stuff, this kind of rap sheet of difficulties, playing whack-a-mole, and thinking, is this a pathology, and do I have to live with it?
And that reinforced my core woundedness, my own beliefs. What's the point? Again, that sort of, hopelessness, helplessness, the powerlessness, the stuckness, the lifelessness in that. How do you function in that?
Yeah, how do you function in that? Because
Mm,
and a lot of therapists will listen to this podcast and they'll be surprised by your honesty. But I applaud your honesty and your congruence here because a lot of therapists live with that sense of imposter syndrome. A lot of them live with this, I should have all of this sorted out, and that have applied the theory and have applied everything else and are still trapped in patterns.
yes, exactly that, exactly. And that's sort of for me, a lot of what started to become, well, my first levels of awareness was this not good enough. And that really got triggered in practice. I'm with clients and it's like constantly, I'm getting loops and loops of my own shit, and it's like, I've got to be present with that client, but I can't be whilst this is going on in me. I'm not good enough. Who do you think you are? What do you know? You don't know anything. You constant shame, constant, ridicule, just this. Yeah, it was so difficult to be with all that and separate that and I couldn't really give them clients what they really needed.
That incredible. But I love what you said there, right? I'm just going to say that back to you because I think it's gorgeous. My first level of awareness was not good enoughness. And that's the first level of awareness. And that's really interesting. This whole podcast is about getting to the core. And one would assume, or one might assume, that not good enoughness is all that there is. Yeah. So if you've got that level of awareness, then you just heal and fix not good enoughness.
Absolutely. And that was just the top of the iceberg, as we know.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
That was just the presentation. That was
yes.
just the way that it could verbalize itself and be seen. That was the way it was that it could be understood
Mm,
in broad daylight in relation to your clients. Not good enough,
absolutely.
not good enough, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. And that's the experience that you hold on to and that you try to heal.
Hmm.
What was your experience of trying to heal that not good enoughness? I don't know if there is an experience, so I'm genuinely asking that question.
Yeah.
Did you have a long term journey trying to heal that not good enoughness?
Absolutely, I'm in and out of therapy. I am, and I'm battling my own addictions and my own shit and my own, but I'm in therapy and I'm trying to, be really honest and understand this. And again, it was just managed. It was just, cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm not here to discredit any therapist, any therapy at all. I've done it all. I've lived it. I've studied it. It's all important in its own right.
I love it.
However, it can only take us so far. And, in that experience for me of, we can acknowledge core wounds, but we can't heal them. And for me, it was like, I know there's something more than this. There's something more, there's something else. And I have been searching high and low. And thank God I am here with you. And thank God you're here. And just thank God. Because I know I'm not the only one to say that and feel that and think that. And, this saved my life. This saved my life. I would not be here without this. I could not be here without this.
Yeah.
I can't
Because,
say that
because
enough.
I know, and I so appreciate that. But I'm going to bring you back a wee bit, right? But because prior to that, you're trying to solve not good enoughness. You're trying to solve perfectionism. You're trying to soothe, and
Yes.
that's the journey. That's the whack-a-mole.
Yes.
And you're in and out of
Absolutely.
therapy trying to solve not good enoughness.
Mm,
Did you get
mm,
any reprieve
mm,
from it
mm.
at the top of that iceberg? Did you get any wiggle room with it?
Not none whatsoever. It was just it kept coming back to that and it kept coming, and it was like, but I couldn't go anywhere under it. It was like I'm stuck. I don't know how to get beneath. If there is a beneath, I'm being told there isn't. There is just this and that's that.
And there's
Um,
just this not good enoughness, and that's it. And there's nothing below it. and that's the
Yes.
core wound, and that's the core difficulty.
Yes.
Where did you think that that not good enoughness came from, if you can say it without exposing too much of your,
Yes.
but where did you think that in its original form when you were working at that early on, where did you think that was coming from?
Um, it was coming from quite recent experiences. There was nothing really of child at this point. I'm still very much in my defense system, denial, deflection. Oh, my childhood's great. My childhood's lovely. My childhood's fine. No problem. There must be something recent. Ah, it was something at college, or it was that boyfriend or that person said
Yeah.
something, or, it was kind of moving into that stuff, but it wasn't anywhere close to where I needed to be.
Okay, and am I right in assuming that you didn't have any major aces? You weren't a client that would have come with all of the aces.
So I had, a parental divorce.
Yeah.
That was, an Easter, but no parents in prison, but there was, some domestic, issues there, and divorce. So,
But it wouldn't have looked,
but
that
yes, on the assessment, not,
would have looked very normalized.
absolutely. And that was the story too, you've had a great childhood. You have been perfect, the good girl, the no problem here.
Wow. Because
Mhm.
I think that's a lot of people's experience. A lot of people's experiences. There is no big aces. I think we can talk about trauma, and I can certainly tell you stories about aces. I mean, and there's a lot of people who can. And somehow that gives you a thread to follow. But when the narrative is you don't have anything to follow, when that's the internal narrative, when it's the external narrative, when it's on a piece of paper in your assessment, and there's nothing, there's a divorce, and yes, there's issues, but I mean, who doesn't? I mean, so this not enoughness has to be at surface, because it can't, and it has to be about that relationship that you just had, and it has to be, because where else is it? Because it can't be anywhere else. That's most a lot of people's experience of this, of and why people can't get to the core, because they're stuck trying to understand it.
Absolutely. Yes, it must be that exam, or it must be this, or but it was more than that. And again, it's all in your head. It's all it. You're dramatic, you're sensitive, you're this, you're that, and now that just feeds more into that wound.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Mm.
you're living with this not enoughness. You're living with this sense of, and tell me a wee bit about the pain of that, if you don't mind, the
Yes.
pain of that not enoughness. What was that like to live with on a continuous basis?
The the sort of living between anxiety and depression, hyperarousal and hypoarousal, and the again, perfectionism, OCD, the scramble to fix, the solving, sublimation, the do 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 go go go, restlessness, study more, train more, be good enough, get more. This ladder of, when is it ever going to be enough? So hence, that's a reflection of my background in academia. I've done it all because that was me trying to solve a problem.
And just for context, if you look at Sadie's credentials, like I looked at them and laughed and thought, is there anything that you haven't done? Because I mean, it's incredible. I mean, you have more qualifications than I have. It's absolutely incredible. They look at the depth and what. But now we understand that. We understand what that was trying to solve, what that was trying to soothe, and that's why I asked you about the pain, because the pain of that, you work on a constant spiral of trying to fix every day.
Absolutely. Because if I didn't, where I would go would be life ending.
There we go.
Life ending was that experience, because in that is, again, all these core beliefs that come with it. I'm not good enough. I'm not capable. I don't matter. I'm unlovable. I'm unworthy. I'm not deserving. I'm an idiot, weak, fat, ugly, inadequate, unwanted, sensitive, dramatic. The list goes on. But the constant, view of myself in that lie, and the reinforcement, and which brought me into hypo, dorsal shutdown, lifelessness, hopelessness. But it's very close to what feels like death.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said something there. I'm going to rewind you a tiny bit, because I think anybody listening to this will really love that. You said something there. You said, I had to do all of that. I had to do all of that OCD. I had to do all of that super perfectionism. I had to do all of that striving and doing, because if I didn't, then I was going to that place that I was trying to avoid. And that didn't look like not good enoughness. That looked like death. That was a very different place. And I think you distinguishing that's going to be very helpful for people listening, because where your focus is in getting away from it, where your presentation is getting away from it, where what you bring to therapy is the perfectionism, the OCD, all of the stuff that's just really a symptom, just really a product. It's just really
Product,
the
okay.
machine.
Right. Yes, absolutely. That wasn't the problem. That was an attempt to solve the
Yes,
problem.
yes, yes.
Yes.
And if you try to solve, which is, where we're trying to get to in this podcast, you try to solve all of that stuff, then that's the game of whack-a-mole, because you solve an OCD, but OCD is really trying to just ensure that you're safe,
Right.
and that your enoughness is safe.
Yes.
And that place behind it, which you're not going to, by the way, and
Yes.
and every therapy that you go on, is just trying to manage the presentation of this stuff.
Right.
Ex-
Absolutely.
Exhausting. And like, I mean, I'm
Mhm.
bereaved. Like,
Mhm.
sorry, I
Yes.
breathe because that feels
It was exhausting. It was exhausting. And and that was the tough part because it was like if I don't find a solution, I cannot live this way for much longer.
yeah.
You
And you're
know?
in your late 20s at that.
Yeah, and there's people living in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s this way, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't know how, and what brave people, we are such brave people, but for us guys to come to clearing and to face that head on, really to look that pain in the eye and get to know it. And we don't know it. We don't know what it is. We don't understand it. It is so unconscious. It is, you know, and that's one of the difficulties, right? We talk about the difficulties of
Yeah.
getting there.
Yeah, I love that. Let me say that back to you a wee bit, because I think that's important. It's not like it's you don't know, you think there's something, like you say, like it's death back there. I don't know what even that means, but I know that it's the end of me. Here's what I can tell you, which is sounds like not enoughness and awful and shameful and difficult and too fat and too ugly and too not enough. That's what it sounds like in my head. There's something that I know that it's back there, and back there looks like death of me, but I don't know what that looks like. That's unconscious. It's not like I'm living there. I'm living here in OCD and perfectionism and all of that is where I think I have to go, but I don't even know what that looks like.
And that was one of the first things I think I said to you in session was, I'm terrified to know what I'm going to find here.
Mhm.
I don't know, there's that kind of difficulty of who I'll be without this pain if it gets healed.
There we go.
Who will I be and what will I become? But also, what the am I going to find along the way? And am I going to survive that? Because my core belief is I won't survive this.
I won't survive what I find. So there's the first difficulty. What
Mm.
is presented is not the problem, it's often the solution,
Yeah.
it's often the product. So there's something here that I
Mm.
don't really know that needs looked at, but there's the first problem. Will I survive looking at it? And then
Yeah.
the second problem is here, hold on, who will I be without it?
Right.
So before I even go beginning to heal it, who will I be without it? And what the hell?
Mhm.
And the dilemma there,
Yes.
like,
Yes.
and we laugh. You've been in my training. I said there's nobody goes skipping to their core wound with daisies in their hair, delighted with themselves. They go there, knees knocking, shaking, petrified, or it has erupted through them with so much vigor that they have broken down. That the
Yes.
sense of who they are is broken. So they arrive broken in pieces or
Yes.
petrified about look what's behind them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right. I didn't do this, I guess, because there was I want to look at this. And it was panic attack, depression, this constant, living in that place of just dysregulation and I couldn't bear that. So either way, it was painful. Either way, but the famous quote we say, the only way out is through. You know, that's the only thing I could trust because I remember I've done all the therapies. I'm coming to you. I don't trust you. I don't trust this.
God knows what this is.
Yeah,
This
absolutely.
another is this another version of that?
Yes, this is another difficulty, the mistrust in the therapy.
But how could it
Yeah,
not be after the
right.
length of journey, after the journey that you have had, and you have
Yeah.
a journey of 8 odd years at that stage, managing symptoms, managing the product, and we call in the method we call this the hierarchy of pain, and we
Mm,
call this secondary pain, managing all that secondary pain,
mm,
managing all of that, playing whack-a-mole, and then you get some fruit and not like me that says, yeah, you just have been looking in the wrong areas, and see that pain that you're avoiding. That's where you and I are going. Come on, let's go over your
yes.
shoulder there towards the dark, deep death of self. Let's go,
Mm,
kid. Let's
mm,
move.
mm.
And so, I mean, I could imagine the mistrust that you have, and that must have took a lot.
It wasn't just the mistrust in the process, it was the mistrust in my own, capacity. Because one of my beliefs at the beginning was, I am not capable. I am a child. That is my, how I feel. In an adult body, but I feel like a terrified child. I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
capable of that. So mistrust in the process and in my own self.
And I would imagine relational mistrust in me because who am
Yeah,
I? And I would
right,
all of that mistrust. So
right.
there's the big block. The big block is there's something behind me and I don't know what it is and it's too much and too big. I
Yes.
don't know who I'm going to be without it. I don't know if I trust you. I don't know if I trust this process. I don't know if I trust me.
Mm.
But what is it that moves you forward anyway?
I think there's so much. I think that the main thing for me is working in the body. That has been revolutionary. It has been profound. It is the only difference with everything else. You know, every other therapy stays in the head, keeps us in the head, keeps us in the thoughts, keeps us in the thinking, keeps us in the. But let's check the body, and that for me was it's like at first it was like, what the hell? You're asking me about the detail of that and what it feels like and the shape of it and the color and what is it? And I'm thinking, what the hell has this got to do with anything? But when you connect to it and you connect to it directly, that is so relieving and it just feels so right and it makes you want to come back for more. It's quite addictive.
Okay, that's very interesting. I've never heard you
Mm,
say that before.
mm.
So this fruit nut in me is saying, let's go to that dark, cold place back there that you think you're going to die in. And you're like, are you out of your mind? But as you start to do that and it becomes cathartic, is was what I hear you saying.
Yes, there's relief in the pain.
Yeah, the medicine is the pain.
Yes, the pain is the solution.
Yes. And so you're walking towards that very and so as we pull this together, so the
Mm,
presentation, the symptoms,
mm,
the whack-a-mole game is all around not enoughness. It's all around not good enough. It's this isn't right and that's not right and so you have to fix it and you have to work hard and you have to be OCD and you spiral from depression to anxiety and so as you're walking towards this pain, how different is the big question. So take your time and answer.
okay.
How different is the core to the symptoms? How different is where you got to and what was causing all this from what it was presenting? What was the difference between the two?
So what comes to mind there is, you know, I didn't know what to expect. I had no idea what we were going to find, what we were going to discover, what it was going to look like, but how irrelevant all that secondary pain was.
Yeah. And yet it is your entire focus. Yet
Yes.
that's what you think needs fixed. Yet that's what you think you want to work with. Yet that's what you're fighting with the therapist because you won't talk about it. Yet and she wants me down here and I want to be here and I want to fix this OCD because it drives me mad. But I'm pulling you back to something and the difference is night and day. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And and I could tell immediately that with connecting and working towards COR was the way. I didn't want to believe it. because it's like, oh God, this is really happening. I've really got to do it. Oh my God. All of them, the fear kicks in, right? The defense system, your threat system kicks in at this point. It has spent a lifetime away from this and it doesn't want you to be with it, close to it. So you're going against everything.
Yet it's calling you, the dilemma.
Mm,
Yet that there's something intrinsic that knows that that is the
yes.
answer, but yet
Yes.
it doesn't want to dissolve itself. Yeah, and it's
Right.
that yin and yang battle. Again, you're not walking there,
Mm,
flowers in your hair and daisies between your teeth, delighted. You're walking there half in and half out the whole time. But the difference, and this is what I want to, like we always say about the model, the difference is the depth, and the depth makes the difference. We always say that about the model, and as a practitioner of this model, you would say that to your own clients, I'm sure. So as you are in that place, in that core place, is it okay for me to ask what the actual difference was? What was that core piece? And now that we know the presentation piece so well, what was that core piece? If you can speak a little tiny with keeping yourself safe as well, say to me.
sure, sure, absolutely. So the presenting piece was not good enough.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. That's my core belief, not good enough. But in the pain, the core woundedness, this was actually about the loss of my authentic self,
Oh,
the loss of me, the real me, my essence, my soul, my spirit, my being, me. This and the loss of that, I mean, the realization of that, was devastating. And to know that I've been functioning in this inauthentic, facade and a mask and armor, and it's like carrying constantly every day these defense systems. But that meant I was only surviving. I wasn't living. I wasn't living as the real me.
yeah, absolutely.
And that was the pain.
So there was experiences, just to put that in context.
Mm.
So there was experiences that obviously we're not going to talk about today, but there was experiences in your life that thwarted your sense of who you were.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Disconnected me from myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. And the layers, we talk about layers, we talk about shelves, we talk about pendulation and, bridging
Yeah.
into that unconscious place. You think you know, but you don't know. Um, and
So just for
yeah.
everybody listening, I want to just recap a wee minute, right? Because what you're saying is what presents is words like not enoughness. They're universal words.
Mm,
They're words that, not need to be better, need to be more, need to be what they want me to be, need to be what he wants me to be, need to be what I don't know who I am, don't know what I want to be. That's what presents. But what is driving all of that is this loss of self, this devastating loss of self through multiple experiences where you are unsafe to be yourself.
thank you. That's exactly the word I was going to jump in and say. The loss of safety in myself, the loss of joy, the loss of happiness, the loss of, excitement, and we're still doing some work, aren't we, Shauna, about again the difficulties here, because the difficulty in the pain is a difficulty, but the difficulty in the becoming is also difficult.
Yes.
And being able to be embodied again to things like happiness, joy,
Oh,
pleasure, love, and pride, and
yeah. Allowing what was never allowed to be, and
yes,
the upgrading of the self. And I love what you say about that, because that is the becoming work, that once the wounded work is healed. So let's stay there a wee minute. So this core piece that you eventually find yourself in, and that you eventually find yourself is the literal near, you can see the reflections of the presentation, but it is very different, walks very different, its experience very different. What was it like to see that core piece eventually once you got there?
um, lots of different things come up when I think about that. It's heartbreaking.
Mm,
It's devastating. It's like but it's also again the relief,
Yeah,
the understanding of it now, and the getting to know it, and knowing there's a way through and out, and so there's hope there, as well as this kind of heartbreak and grief and loss, and acknowledge reconnecting back to that. But there's also this hope that I'm here. I made it. This is it. This is where I am meant to. It feels right to be here. This is, when you know, you know.
yeah. And so this is not my interpretation of where you should be. This is you arrive at that place knowing it to be right for you, knowing that this is the wounding, knowing this is what's causing all of this. And that's a relief, and then that's gorgeous, and it's devastating and gorgeous at all at the same time. It's cathartic, and but at least you know, at least you're not searching anymore now for what is.
Absolutely. And that we talk about also the benefits of this, of getting into core. I know we're not here yet, but that
No, just follow that
regulation.
through because that's actually
Okay.
that was going to be my next question. So
Okay.
when you are
Mm.
here and you start to reconsolidate that core, you start to really heal from that
Yes.
internal place. Your experience of healing this has been phenomenal because a lot of your experience was actually physical.
Mm. Mm.
That was
Right.
incredible to see.
Yeah, absolutely. My weight, my eczema, my autoimmune issues, shingles. Who the hell has shingles at 22?
Wow.
Hand and foot and mouth disease. There's all sorts of stuff going on. But my eczema, that's been the most, incredible. I'm showing you my hand now. There's nothing here. There's nothing there. It's
And that
still
would have been heavily inflamed.
absolutely covered, and it would always again be met with, we can only manage this. Doctors, GPs, here's your medication, here's your steroid cream, here's another 20 years of that or whatever it is, and it just feels so good to know that there is, again, when we work with root, there's nothing that comes close to that.
Nothing.
Mm.
And so as that was beginning to become reconsolidated and continues to be reconsolidated, and as you're coming out the other end of that, because you know, sometimes what can happen is you can do all of this work, and it's very interesting. People talk about healing the core wound. A lot of the work and the healing is the getting there. Would you say
Absolutely.
that's true as well?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Every part of it is, I think, and that's another thing, the difficulty, what we believe healing to be.
Yes.
My own interpretation of that was, well, I'm going to wake up one day and this is all going to be gone and I'm going to be happy forever. And that's that,
Yes,
you know.
yes. But when we talk about healing, we're talking about healing this core pain. And let me just add a wee bit of detail about that. The pattern, the totality of the pattern that exists within that core pain.
Mm,
Because if you don't mind me bringing some words to this, not only did you have this loss of self, which was core, and this loss of authentic self, but yeah, all of that shame and blame that was woven in there, gone, completely gone, reconsolidated, moved. No, like it's not there anymore, which is where they get all of this clearing up of symptoms. Is that fair? We talk about
absolutely.
healing. Is that fair to say that?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because, that, and again, that was an incredible part of the work for me is the shame. That we talk about, that I've talked about the loss of my authentic self, but the shame that, I can't, again, every day I'm waking up, I hate myself. I hate my life. I want to die. I can't wait to die. How do I kill myself? How do I, really, and I'm sorry that that could be quite triggering for a lot of people to hear, but I just want to be really congruent here and really honest in what that looked like for me. And, people wouldn't have known that. People, what I presented with was, wow, she's thriving. Look at that. And wow. And,
Look at
but
her
in,
sixth degree,
yeah,
her
and
master's.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
internally, it was like, you've got no idea. But because it was never safe to explore that, express that, and again, no one knows about this. So, not to shame and blame anyone, everyone's done the best they can with the knowledge they've had. But we're stuck with this now. And that again it's life threatening, but going anywhere near it and for it to be triggered is life ending. So where do you go from there? So when we started to, I mean, that shame, I remember that session so well. I'm looking over my shoulder. You're watching me and I'm saying, Shauna, where's that shame gone? Where's it gone? I don't know. You know,
Where is it?
so
Are you sure it's and that disbelief because now you're becoming something different and you don't even know how to wear that for a while, that. But that to say that healing journey, it's I don't want it to sound like you arrive at the core and it all dissipates. It does not. There's work to be done and there's reconsolidation work to be done when you're there. But a lot of the journey is getting there, and then a lot of the journey is reconsolidating. But once you get to that reconsolidating part, which is what we're talking about, then the symptomology starts to shift. Then you're not playing. You've no intention of playing whack a mole anymore. You're
right.
smiling. Tell me what you're telling me.
It just made me think about, the threat system. And, anytime I'm stressed or anxious, I'd get inflammation and my body would be trying to signal something, but the fear of, what was under it, so I'm now embodied to that core wound. I'm fully embodied to it. So my threat system, and I think this is such a difficult thing that needs to be said. The process is not for the faint-hearted. It
Yes.
is not easy at all. If we do this work, we've got to ensure that it's safe. We've got to ensure we've got things around us to keep us protected and well and good and, stable through this because this can really destabilize us. And it did for me for a while. I'm waking up every day in anxiety. I'm getting, panicked and I'm getting, we do APP work. So that, maps and patterns is another thing, but that completely helped along the way because that threat system wasn't letting me touch anything whilst that was whilst that was active. So the difficulty in easing defense systems along the way, being able to negotiate with that and again talk create safety is so
I
important in our work, isn't
love
it?
that. So what you're saying is on the way to that core, yes, we can talk about healing. Yes, we can talk about the reconsolidation and the symptoms magically disappearing and no inflammation. But the journey there, if you're coming back to that, which I think needs said, the journey back to that, the journey to that core, the journey was filled with potholes and difficulties. It was filled and it needed to be safe. That was the constant theme that we had when we were working. Let's make this safe because it was so unsafe to revisit those really unconscious dark places. So safety was the only thing that could help us there and was really important.
Yes, and just to maybe uh, add to that, just for the guys that are listening, it was really about breaking it down to manageable chunk size pieces,
Yeah.
that because that totality we talk about, to drop someone into that without any scaffolding or any safety, you're going to re-traumatize people here. And that's not what we're about. So I think this work is so incredible in terms of what it can do for us and the benefits, but also the safety in it and knowing that you're in good hands
The whole way through. And
the
is that how
whole way
you
through.
felt safe as you were
100%.
going towards that core? It was safety is important. I think that's lovely for anybody listening, whether they're in use of this model or whether they're in another model. We are safe, and we wouldn't do the work if it's not safe.
Right. Absolutely.
Safety is priority in
That's
the
right.
access in the core. Safety is priority. I could do 20 podcasts on safety. Could have do
Yes.
20 of them. But
Yes.
safety is a key factor of getting there and getting there in one piece and getting there without re-traumatizing and having then the capacity to heal so that you can get out the other end.
Absolutely.
Okay,
It's,
wonderful. We see. Look at the time. We've been doing this for
we could
45.
talk about this forever, couldn't we?
Yeah, 45 minutes. So the becoming stage, as you're reconsolidating this wound, as the symptomology is falling away, as all of all the
Mm.
difficulties happening,
Mm.
as you're getting, more used to your authentic self, and
Mm.
you're reacquainted with it. What's the world look like? What's possible for you, Sadie?
I could cry as you ask that, you
Mm.
know, because people pleasing gone. Overcompensating, gone. Self-sacrificing, gone. Physical symptoms, eczema, gone. Physiological symptoms, anxiety, gone. Somatic sensations, tension, heaviness, gone. More tolerance, more capacity, more emotional intelligence and awareness, more self-care, more self-compassion, more self-regulation, more internal safety and peace, more agency, more sovereignty, more independence, more stability, more security, more reassurance. I could go on forever. But to find joy again in
Yes.
life for
Yeah.
me is just that brings so much back, because that's the loss of, loss of my happiness and my joy and my authentic self. And to kind of be again, I'm still getting used to that. I'm still, you can see it's moving me and it makes me emotional. I could sit with that pain all day, the shame and stuff. I can spend, but the tolerance with this stuff for me, I'm still building tolerance here. I'm still building capacity and getting used to this and being familiar with it because it's still overwhelming.
And this wee authentic girl, this wee authentic Sadie, what was her vision for the future?
Just to live and not survive, just to be able to live and not survive anymore. And
If she's allowed to thrive, what is she thriving?
expressing myself
Oh,
just authentically and not apologizing for that and not being ashamed of who I am and valuing myself and valuing life and people and pain is now part of me again. I'm not turning away from it. It is them fragments that we talk about, fragmentation. I feel so complete and collected and I'm back to myself. I'm not picking up parts of myself or throwing parts away. I accept it all. I want it all. And that's that self-acceptance that I'm giving myself what I never had. I'm giving myself what I need more of. And that happens so organically now. It's happening so often where I'm not having to work hard for it.
beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Do you know what's gorgeous about what you just said? It's a lovely way to end. Oh, if we think about getting to the core, self acceptance was the cure, self acceptance was the medicine, self authenticity and being with that authentic self was where this had to be. And what it produced was a sense of not enoughness, of course. When you can't accept yourself, you can see why not enoughness was the predominant energy and the predominant language that came because it really was about self acceptance. And what's beautiful is that you're on a journey of self expression, authentic self expression. And whatever that means and whatever that looks like will be yours to decide and yours to fulfill and nobody else's.
Yeah. And I wouldn't be sat here this time, probably even last year,
Yeah.
because shame would have been like, "Phew, who wants to listen to this? Who, you're not important, what and it's like I felt excited coming here today, not anxious, not on
Because you
edge.
express yourself. Because
Yes.
yet you express your authentic self, your authentic journey, your authentic inner world, and it's all authentic, and there's not one bit of shame and not one bit of blame, nothing but authenticity, nothing but the purest reflection on of your authentic self.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. And thank you for, the work. And thank you for sharing this. Thank you for everyone listening. Thank you. Just thank you because I have so much gratitude now. And I am so grateful every day I wake up and I thank you. I thank life. I thank me. And before I never would have thought that I'd be here with this.
Yeah, and here we are full circle, you
Mm.
know, on this beautiful becoming journey, becoming the authentic self, having got back to that authentic self. And there's a famous quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but we'll end with that. And I really am going to butcher it. And you can send the proper quote on. It's a T.S. Eliot quote, and it says something like this: after all of this journey, I arrived back to myself, only to know myself for the first time,
Love that one, don't we? That quote is gorgeous.
and to move forward
Right.
as
Absolutely.
myself for the first time.
That's right. That's
Journey.
right.
And that's the journey out of when you get to the core, it's not like, you have all the answers. Now you're beginning to know yourself, and for you, be authentically in that expression. So
Absolutely. Thank you.
gorgeous. Oh, and all that I get to say to you is just thank you for being you and the fullness of who you are, that we get to learn through that, and we get to see this journey through an authentic lens, warts and all, which is authentic. And I'm so glad that you're your authentic you, because without your authentic you, I don't get to do this podcast, and people don't get to learn, and people don't get to hear what it's like. And your authentic self will have helped so many people tonight try to get to their authentic self. So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the trust that you have in me and the trust that you have in this process. So thank you. Thank
Absolutely. It's an honor. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
you.